This opening screen, you know, Ansel Adams had this great quote. Tonight we're going to talk about selective, and it's like dodging and burning. And his quote was, "Dodging and burning are the steps to take care of mistakes God made in establishing tonal relationships." That was really great and very apropos. Tonight I want to recap session 1. I'll go quickly over the 4 phases, the software, the raw, and then I want to demo the camera development settings. Then I'm going to start the discussion on the selective portion of the phases. When I go into review, just say yes, no, questions. I found that interesting, whatever it is, because I'm going to go through them quickly, but if there was questions you had about any of those specifics during the recap would be a good time to do it. Also, what I'd like to do, I sent an email. Did everybody get that email that says, could you go to your screen and open up your browser and go to our screen, which was this, I think I put the link in the email and make it easier. It's onezone.photos PDI.
Yeah.
Okay. And if everybody could try this, I need to know this. Could you leave a comment? Watch what I'm going to do. Watch me. You can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So if I say, this is Bob's, and it's got a spell checker in here, but it's very simple. I would love, this is Bob's test. And when I'm there, I have to check. I'm not a robot. And it says select all the images with grass. It's their way of doing, I think those are the 2 I see. That could have one. Let me try verify here. I'm not a robot, and then I can hit post a comment.
So Bob, you didn't receive my comments?
When did you send them?
One today and one maybe yesterday.
It was fixed about 3 o'clock today. Could everybody just, no, I didn't. Could
Okay.
everybody just type in right now so we know? Just if you want, you can leave your name. And if you have questions from last time or this time, you could say, you know, if I get an email or it just gets lost. So let me know. Is everybody typing in now? I heard mine come through.
Wait.
Isn't that a crazy way Google has? Eric, that's the Google's reCAPTCHA. It's not just the CAPTCHA. The Google has one, and it's pretty clever. And the reason why it wasn't working is they give you a key and a security key, and somehow they must have changed it, and I missed the email, but they didn't coincide. So, did we get our everybody having luck, or tell me when you're through?
No.
Nobody sent anything yet?
I just put my thing in, and I checked off. I'm not a robot. I don't get any visual. It says post comment.
Okay.
I'm clicking it, and now it's telling me that it's waiting for your approval.
Okay, I just got an email. What you guys need to know how this works. Some of you do, some of you don't. I get the questions, and if it says, you know, you've got to get Freddie out of this goddamn class. She's an annoyance. You know, Bob, you got to stop this kind of crap. You can't keep, you know, clicking your heels. It's not going public until I see it. Now I'm hearing the emails come in. So I probably won't post these. I can just delete them without doing it. It's moderation. It's saying, get it into me. I hear another one coming in. So it's pretty successful. What I wanted you to do is, on the bottom of our page, any questions you have, and then when I respond to them, then everybody can hear them, and you're saying, you know, Bob, I had the same question, and thank you for your response, but it's still not clear to me. That's okay. I'll do something for the next class. But this way we'll all be able to share it, okay? So one of the things on my list of things to do was to make everybody send a comment, and I hear them all in. There's about 7. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go into Lightroom, and I'll proceed with this. On reviewing, we're going to review the 4 phases. I'm going to do this quickly because we're going to process so many pictures of this session, next session, and the session afterwards. that you'll see this 18 times. I'm going to recap. I'm going to demo setting the camera development defaults. I'm going to discuss phase 3, and we're going to process. Not quite 4 phases. We'll get that to next week when we do the 4th phase, but we'll touch all 3 phases, and we're going to process members' images. And I hope you have some selected. We're not going to hit everybody tonight, but we'll go on their PCs. That's the intent. We'll see how far we get. So the 4 phases are import, global, selective, and expressive. Now we're processing the digital image. Every one of these processes the data. The import gets processed on whatever your camera defaults are set at. And that was phase 1, and I'm going to demo that again tonight because some of you tried it, some of you may not have tried it, some couldn't download the file because it's gone through many iterations. The second one is global, and we talked about that. And the first night we talked about these 2. The import, this gets applied with the camera defaults, you know, standard clarity, sharpening, noise, camera calibration, lens profile. We'll see that tonight. If you were to look at your settings that can be synchronized, your settings in Lightroom, process version 2012, on import, the only things you want to set are the white balance, clarity, sharpening, process version, calibration, lens profile, and chromatic aberration. Why? Because this is what you do every time. Every time. It's like processing your black and white film at 68 degrees and agitating every 30 minutes. You say, yeah, but I have a contrasty scene. Oh, I have a flat overcast day. You don't think about that when you're processing your film. You just give it the standard process. You'll take care of that when you start printing. And when you start printing, that's kind of global, right? You select the paper, you put light down on it, and that's it. This is where you're going to change the white balance, the black and white points, the shadows, the highlights, the contrast. All of these are kind of global adjustments. And tonight we're going to talk about the selective adjustments, but these are global. Your white balance changes your whole image. When you're changing these, you may change highlights and shadow portions, but it's happening globally. Clarity, sharpening, color, saturation and vibrance, color adjustments I left out, treatment color I left out, because sometimes that's the hue, saturation, and the lightness, which doesn't affect global. It could be selective. Noise reduction, luminance and color, that happens globally. Lens corrections, all of these happen globally. We'll be showing these all because we're going to process, like I say, a lot of images. Process version, calibration, this affects globally your image, and crop and synchronize. Now, I want to go over quickly, and if there's any questions here, I had a few comments of people saying they were surprised about this, the relationship between exposure, data, and software relationship. If you remember, we talked about Lightroom, Photoshop. Most of our raw processing software is 16 bits. That's 65,000 shades of red, green, and blue, and that's trillions of colors. But yet our camera, most of them are 12 bits, only take 4096. Now that's providing you hit an optimum exposure, which means 94% of your image is made by your software. Okay, is that clear to everybody? That's pretty drastic. And I put this in gray because, as you know, it's only 44,096 of your megapixels. So again, if you had 12 megapixels, you'd have 50% green, that would be 6 megapixels. But this is just it has a green filter over it, but it's just taking monochromatic data. So it's grayscale data. And when you put it in, open it up, you're getting 16 bits. And this is the thing that I said, if you underexpose by 2 stops, because of the linear nature of the chip, you only get 1024. And if you're underexposed by 2 stops, 98% of the image you're looking at is made up by your software. And I also said, I sent an email. If you get a chance about that exposure, you know, I have links on the page. Any questions there?
No.
Okay. So, and I try to say, listen, the optimum digital exposure, it's critical. But it's essential for optimizing the digital process, because if we're going to process our data, we'd like to grab as much as we can. And I made the statement that said, if the brightest part of your software reads 97% in Lightroom or in Photoshop, which I think Photoshop, that translates to 252 on a 0 to 255, you're one stop underexposed if you're running 97% brightness. And you're two stops underexposed if you're 90% brightness. And what's really interesting is I don't know if anybody had a chance to go and look at one of their captured images and then they roll the cursor over it and see probably 85s, and I bet you didn't see too many 90s. Did anybody try analyzing any of their photos? If you haven't, try that. And I'll roll over some of them tonight as I'm doing it. And the big part of this was, if you miss by 2 stops, you did. If the brightest part of your capture is 90% in your software, you've missed 50% of the possible scene data when you captured the image. So we're talking about processing here, but you want to be processing as much data as you can. The optimum digital exposure, for those of you who don't remember, that's what the TODI was, right? The optimum digital exposure is very critical. On the links on our page, I have the article I wrote for Luminous Landscape, in a shorter one, and you know what I didn't put a link on was to my book, but that's neither here nor there. But that's very important. I talked about software. This visual, I did a little more work after our talk, because there was some more obvious things than I said I should. The 4 phases of processing the digital image that I'm using is not software specific. It's more of a modality. It's a mindset. However, I did mention some of the raw processing software should have, obviously, global adjustments, selective, sometimes people call it localized tools. That's the brush, that's the gradient. We'll show a lot of those tonight. That's what it's about. Pixel replacement. You know, some people think that's Photoshop, but certainly to get rid of dust, get rid of a hydrant, you probably can do that with the spot removal in Adobe Camera Raw. And I think a software should be able to support camera defaults, because it's part 1 of my phases, phase 1, import, and there's differences when you import from your different cameras. And Lightroom in Adobe Camera Raw has the ability to see with the metadata what camera it is, and it can apply the adjustments. Preferably, there's non-destructive plugins, and it maintains the original data throughout the process. That's more when we get to phase 4. Raw processing software. Someone had asked me saying, well, what about the camera manufacturer software? Oh boy, it knows every hook. It knows, you know, everything they built in their camera. They know how to grab it. Way back early, Nikon used to say, you know, if you don't use our software, you're not getting optimum, because when you set in your camera, RAW, maybe the portrait mode, their software sees it. Adobe's doesn't, but you can change all of that. But camera manufacturer software, I'm not really high on, because they're good at making cameras, but I don't think they do a great job staying current with their softwares. I like ACR, and when I say parens Lightroom, Photoshop question mark, again, when you're using Lightroom, you're using the ACR processor to Adobe Camera Raw. It's processing your raw images. When you open up in Photoshop, it's using the same processor. So if you use Lightroom, if you use Photoshop, it doesn't matter. It's using the same Adobe Camera Raw. So if I slip and say Lightroom or Photoshop as a global thing, I'm really talking about Adobe Camera Raw, and you can use it. Some people, like I put, you know, There's the Capture One, there's the DxO software. I don't know them, but you know, we know the large base. It has tons of online users, free video tutorials, and it's a powerful, Lightroom is a powerful production tool when you're trying to put talks together, but there are many powerful softwares out there. And so become totally familiar with your software. You know, it could do it all. They may do it differently, but you say, well, I don't have that. And then all of a sudden you'll find it. You know what I did here, if you noticed, I put up Snapseed. These are, and this is Lightroom Mobile. This is a real interesting set of software. It emulates a 645 camera. It goes f-stop, shutter speed, depth of fields, and it's all for the apps on your mobile. Processing the digital image. The software that is not specific to this, and it doesn't necessarily have to be here. There is tons of software, and we talked today at breakfast about being a sensitive photographer. You can be a sensitive photographer if you're shooting by the phone, but please clean up your backlit images. I'm going to be using Adobe ACR throughout the whole process here, and I think we all are. I asked people, and everybody had Lightroom. The camera raw versus JPEG. Well, that's the end of that. Any questions on that? And then I'm going to review the next thing. Okay, go ahead. Up to speed. Thank you, Freddie. That's helpful to me. So camera raw versus JPEG. Now, we all know why we're going to use camera raw, because it has so much data. And I thought, like, would you let your camera process for you? Well, because this is a talk on processing, I have to talk about the camera, because if you're shooting JPEG, that's where your processing occurs. And if that's all you want to do, the camera does the processing based on your camera settings. So inside here, whether you're shooting natural or you're shooting high contrast or more sharp and all of those settings, if you're using your camera to process, which I think a lot of us sensitive photographers would say, hey, I don't take that out of my hand, but be aware, then go in and change the settings inside here, because that's what you're going to get. Now, we don't want to do this because we don't want to shoot JPEG. I'll tell you, the raw data that you're getting is 1,000 times more data, thousands of times more data than JPEG. And if you remember, we talked about the software being adaptive and smart. Well, the more data you can send to this smart adaptive technology, the better results you're going to get. And that gets magnified. Now, remember, we got 65,000 as opposed to 256 shades per channel, but then it even goes further than that. So I'm talking to I'm preaching to, you know, the choir here. Everybody knows they're shooting JPEG, but remember, if you use, shooting RAW, but if you're shooting JPEG, that's settled in the camera. What's important for you to know, and I want to remind this area, is the blinkies on the back of your camera are based on these JPEG settings. And it's the same preview when you're shooting RAW. So when you're shooting RAW, you're looking at the blinkies on the back, and I will tell you that the blinkies on the back of the camera occur one stop before the optimum white point in your software. So when you see the blinkies on the back of your camera, if you stop there, you're going to lose 50% of your information. So don't listen to the blinkies. You can run your own test. I can tell you, if you take a bracket of 2/3 of a stop and 2 out of the 3 are blinking, then you're very good. Because you know one of them is going to get real close to 99%. So I think this bottom one we hadn't talked about before. Was everybody aware, and maybe by a show of hands if you can find it, that the blinkies occur one stop before the warning, the red warning in Adobe Camera Raw? Eric, were you aware of the value here?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, then that's very important. Any hands raising, Hank?
I
Yeah,
did.
Eric did and Freddie did. I can't.
Okay, Freddie, you can't. That's okay. You can talk. Freddie, were you not aware of that, or do you know something about it? Not that I
Oh,
don't
I
want.
knew it. I
Yeah,
knew that before.
yeah. Okay. Well, that's very important for those who didn't know it, and you can read my optimum exposure. Hank 6D camera. What we're going to do now is hold the alternate key down, set the defaults, and say, update this, and take a look at this. Model Canon EOS 6, serial number 099. You didn't see a serial number on my Lumix. That's because somehow Panasonic didn't think that was important to put in there. But if Hank has two 6Ds with different serial numbers, Lightroom will know it. And if he shoots something, or if he's doing a wedding photographer, shoots two cameras, two 6Ds, they'll have two different serial numbers. And when it comes into Lightroom, the teal dress will be the same teal. You know, it's getting everything the same. So when I say hit update the settings, you're going to notice that the 11 should go gray now. And the sharpening will be 40, and the same as it was, but now it's in gray, which is real interesting now, because if we were to hit reset on all his other 6D photos, they'd go right to 11 and 40. And not only that, every time he inputs from this camera, that serial number, they're coming in with these values. They're processed. That's what I'm saying with phase one. Import is a process. And when you process your film, black and white, Ektachrome, if you've ever had done that, you know, everything is regimented there. It has nothing to do with the scene. Just get me the best negative, the optimum E6 process I can, because I'm going to start doing things with it. So this was Paul's camera. And what's interesting here is he had on this lens that was a 16 millimeter lens. And the lens correction here was none. If I enable this, Lightroom says, oh, geez, hey, listen, wait a minute. I found that this was the 16 to 35 millimeter, and it just took out that chromatic aberration in the vignetting. Don't you think you want to do this every time with every lens you have? So all you're going to do here is set this, go to the basic, set this, but it's crazy. You might as well go ahead. Oh, look at this. Highlight shadows, whites. Okay, and I'm going to put the clarity here to 11 because it's very soft. Not Paul's camera, so, but instead of me doing all that, when I hit reset, it goes back to the defaults. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say, take this one, take this one. I'm going to transfer from the DNG over to this. I'm going to say sync the settings. I'm going to say select all. I'm going to synchronize it. And I just transferred everything over to Paul's. Now, if I hit reset, I lose it all because I haven't set the reset or the defaults yet. So I'm going to go back here to the history where I synchronize the settings. Those are the ones I want, right? And this is the one that has the lens correction on it. Should be basic, and on this one, on the profile, it should be here. The detail should be 40. Now I'm going to hold the Alt key, and it takes the reset button back to set defaults, and it says, okay, now this is a Canon 5D with a serial number of such and such. Please note that these changes are not undoable. I'm going to show you that they are when I hit this update. Now look at this. They're all gray. Why? Because it doesn't matter what I do here. As soon as I move them off, things change, huh? But as soon as I hit reset, it goes right back to those defaults. And if you said, what the hell am I doing here? I'm going to hit Alt, set here. I can go right to say, I don't know why I followed Bob down this road. Hit the restore the defaults. When you hit reset now, everything's back to 0, no lens. That's not the one you want. Now when I hit reset now, that's not the one you want. So you see how important this is? I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go back here. This is the one we wanted. So once you transfer, you say set defaults, update current settings, and now every time you import, you've taken care of phase 1. And the only thing I would recommend you changing at the outside, because you can personalize this any way you want. You know, you can say, I like my pictures warm, you know.
That's lovely.
Well, you know, but, you know, people may do this and say, boy, I love to shoot the Canon faithful or landscape. Or, you know, Canon comes up with its own profiles, as does Nikon. And if you notice, they all show up here. On Hanks, they show up differently because that's a Nikon family. And on the Lumix, it says, hey, all I have is Bob's personal profiles here, because it's not that important for Adobe to make profiles. You know, it doesn't, they don't duplicate them. So the interesting part about this is if you say, I don't know, when I shoot, I always like to shoot in portrait, or if I like that one. Well, that may be for this picture. Hitting reset, you want the Adobe standard. The only thing I would say, if I pull this down, and I showed this the last time, if I pull this down, Hank had made a Canon profile for this. So this is with the camera, the Passport. I recommend this tremendously. But when I do this, did you see the color blue? That was his chip. That was his chip, Adobe standard. So he's balancing for his chip. So if I hit reset, everything goes back to where it was. I'm going to go here. I'm going to hit the alternate. I'm going to say set defaults and update the current settings to the, what did I change? Well, if he shot the Passport and made a profile, this is like putting a filter pack on your enlarger lens just to get neutral, you know? And if someone says, but how do you know that's the right blue? I don't care. Because every time that blue comes in, it's going to come in that way. And now I'm going to be able to have a baseline. You know, if you don't watch your temperatures, if you agitate too much with Ektachrome 6, when you process Ektachrome, the colors, the curves would shift and you get, this normalizes it. So what we did here was we manually set them. I'm going to see if there's a way I can get around that. If not, I'll post what it is and people will type it in. But we have this, we want to change it, and so it takes care of our first input, and you can see that's very big, especially with the lenses. Okay, questions there?
So that was using the color checker, the X-ray color checker?
Yes. Yeah, it's you need to do that. You need to do that. One of the things that, just not to go too far down that discussion, but you know, don't listen to people when they say, well, you know, I was in Colorado and then I went from Colorado to Boston. Yeah, one up in the clouds, and I think I even put the date here. It was like it was in May, and I came right back to Boston, and I flew home and said, someone said, well, you're going to make one for every, what happens if you go down to the equator? What happens if you go down? It's not what, X-ray clears all of that out. It's just trying to find the raw data of RGB and match it. So here is my Lumix. This has a dual illuminant. I won't go in there, but the changes are subtle. And I have two backs. They look the same for the both backs. So yeah, please, maybe at another time we'll talk about that, but I totally believe in camera calibration. Any other questions on this? You know, here it's, and if we wanted to process this more, we got to start processing now. And I'm going to go through a few images.
Bob, would you say those settings are good for landscapes generally, or is that a more of a generic starting point for?
Well, no, it's everything is a generic starting point. You know, there is a term called frequency, and it means how much. What's the frequency? It's texture. So, if you had a screen door, the frequency would be 100%. If you shot a white painted flat wall with like this, with a picture frame on it, well, this doesn't have a lot of frequency, although if I look, there is detail on the wall. No, this has a lot of frequency. So depending on the frequency, these values here have a different effect. You know, when you go into noise reduction or changing the radius, it has to do with how much it's picking up on. You see the difference?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a moving target, David. You know, it's almost like whatever you need to be sensitive as a processor to say, "Woo, this is a lot of frequency." You know what clarity does? Clarity, some people think of mid-tone contrast. It's not. It's edge detection. You see that?
Yep.
It's just going under on top of this, and it's lowering that. A minus 30 would have a different effect on a picture like this because, you know, there's nothing to it. So there's no finite numbers on those, but it's a great question.
Bob,
So, yeah?
if I'm going to retroactively calibrate photographs, I have to take off white balance, don't I?
Well, it all depends what you want to do. If you go back, I think I told a story of at the white light group. Don't I have that in a white light folder here? And this is what I did on the 16th. And I think I told you that that I take a picture of. This was this guy, Andrea, and I saw him 10 years ago, and this is when he was with my father.
Yeah.
And I took this picture, and when we went back in there, I said, Andrea, I can't believe I see you. You saw my father 10 years ago. Oh, how is your papa? Oh, not good. He passed away. Oh, so sorry, sir. But I want to take a picture of you with my wife. So when I wanted to show this in the show, I went here, right mouse clicked, go to the library. It takes me to Sicily. This Sicily was shot in 2005. Let me go here. And if you look at this, these pictures here, he was saying, Susanna, you're eating it the wrong way. But look at this. These were all processed in 2005. That was before 2010. Pretty good, I'm smart at this. But it was not 2012, and there's a significant difference from 2010 and 2012. It's magnitudes different. So when I went back, to Andrea to go ahead and process it, look, I saved everything as DNGs at that time on my Olympus camera. What I did was, the first thing I did was, oh, look, I probably already processed. That was the one I processed. Let me take another one. The first thing I did was saying, let me go ahead and change this to 2012. I don't know if you saw a difference, but look at my niece's clothes here, and look at all the banding. And this is the smoothness of the. So when I went back to Andrea, that I wouldn't go back and process all my Sicily photographs because they're good and I processed them. They're not optimum for sure, but they're good. But if I'm going to go to, now watch this again. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to go back to the collection that was a larva. You see how I'm going around this. I'm going to certainly go ahead and process this. See, so your question was, don't you want to go back? Yes and no. The only thing I would say at that point is if you had a picture, that you know, especially, now again, watch the navigation. I'm going back to the pilot 2. This one here. If I go ahead and say I want to make a preset, if I wanted to make a preset, I got to be in develop. If I wanted to make a preset to say, I don't want to update Andrea, but I may want to go and say, make a preset called, what was it, the E300? It was the Olympus.
I don't know. What
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Olympus 300, and this would be calibration only. Now,
okay.
you can do calibration, you can do whatever you want, but I'm going to uncheck all,
Yep.
check none, then say, give me the calibration.
Yep.
Look at, I said check none. It doesn't get rid of the process version. Now that's okay. That's 2012, that's good. But I'm going to do that, and then when I create this, when I go, I'm going to put that calibration in every Olympus picture. So if you want to go back and refix those, and you could also say, give me a, way back up here, plus, give me not only that, you don't want to change your white balance because you might have already warmed up an image, you know what I mean? But anything you think you want to put back in there, you can make that and selectively, so you could go back to all your images. David, if you haven't calibrated your camera and you calibrate it now, you say, gee, I wish it was back. I wish I did this to all of them. You could select all that camera and just say, save a preset as cam cal only, and then go ahead and put it in there.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't reprocess until it's that time, but it's significant when you do. It's a good question. How's everybody's energy level?
Good.
Good.
Good. Okay. 'Cause we covered a lot. Okay. The first thing we're doing is importing. We do change that image. The next thing was the global, and then it's the selective. And the selective is what we're going to talk about tonight. Next week, we're going to talk about the expressive. And the last session, we're going to just process a lot more images, although I'm going to transfer over tonight to somebody. Selective would be a spot removal, adjustment brushes. Basically, it's this. The white balance is a global thing. We've already taken care of that. Now we're looking at the color treatment, split toning, but this box is very important. And the spot removal, not so much to get rid of dust like its whole intention was. If you look at this, look at Hank's images. Now, I don't know how many people use presets. I mean, let me reset everything. This is reset back to everything. When I make changes, I use these snapshots an awful lot, okay? And when I go to develop this picture, you know, if I say, here's my import, I want to change it there, there are lots of good reasons to use snapshots in a creative way. I'm doing this now in a more educational and tutorial way, but look at the capture of this camera. This camera came in without, this is how it was taken in the camera. When it was imported, okay, and I think, yeah, the Canon 6D. So you can see, obviously, the lens correction was applied. And what you can see is the detail, which has no sharpening in your camera. because sharpening is not saved. When it comes in, it gets imported, sharpened, light. You want to do that with everything, right? So that's the import. This is the global. This is the global, but I made an intermediate step so that wouldn't throw you. I did the crop first, and then this is the global. Now, whether you like it or not, I hope you like it, but I look at that and I said, well, I'm not sure if I got all my blacks in here or whatever, but this was all the general processing. And again, I'm going to process some more, but sometimes as my last step, I see I got black in here, all right? So, and that's what it is. You may want it more contrasty or not, but this is global. Selective, if you notice selective, two things happened here. There was a gradient coming down in the back. Everybody sees that, that's pretty obvious. And the next one was, there was a change in his face, I think. So look at this, here's global. When I go up to my brushes, and watch this and make sure, go set these. If I'm on my brushes and I roll over here, I don't see anything, right? No, I didn't make selective adjustments. These are the selective adjustments. If I go to the brush, when I roll over, I don't see it. Do you see any brushes? I don't see the brushes. And let me go here.
You don't have anything set.
Oh,
There's one, Bob.
Where?
Just to the right of her chin.
Oh, there's one. Okay,
Yeah.
that's this gradient. And where is the brush? Should be.
I didn't see a brush, but that
Yeah,
doesn't
no,
mean it isn't.
I think it should be on his face. Oh, maybe that's when I ended up doing it on an expressive, which was, I think that's it. I can see it
Yeah,
here.
there it is.
I lost track of it. Okay, so watch. So now here's the global, and the only thing that hit. Well, by the way, did anybody notice the railing go away on the left?
No.
Look at this. Look at this terrible left hand off the screen. All of these eyes. Your eye takes away from it. After global, and the global here was all of this. If I shut these off, we're going to do a lot of this touch-up. The touch-up we're going to do in the demonstration is going to be for the purpose of the demonstration. If I take the dog out of the scene, and you're going to say, yeah, that's great, but I wanted the dog, I'm not making any aesthetics when we process. If it's an opportunity for me to show this, and I'll show you how you line, I mean, it's easy to line up. I mean, it's not that hard. You can move them up and move them down to line them up and ease them in. So one of the things on selective, we certainly should be able to take these and get them away. Matter of fact, global, and watch how nice these presets work. I'm going to correct this. This is delete, and I'm going to delete every one of these because they should have been no part of global, because it was global. I'm going to right mouse click this and update this. These are very, very powerful. So here is this, here is the general, and now here I've got a lot of things happening. When you look at this, by the way, what's very important is this auto. You'll never see them if the tool overlay is never to be shown. If it's always to be shown, it's going to drive you nuts when you want to set something else. You want it on auto, and it only comes about when when your cursor is in the screen. Make sure this is on auto. And you're going to see that with all the tools. So let's look at the gradient tool here, because this is what's powerful on, and Hank and Eric, I'm going to make statements that I know to be true, obviously. And when I make a statement that I'm not sure, I'm going to say I'm pretty sure, so please feel free to jump in. But I think this gradient tool, when you look at it here, and I can show, I use this an awful lot, show the mask overlay. You'll notice that there is no gradient around his face, and there's no gradient around their heads. That's because I erased them. When you make a gradient, we should all know how to make a gradient. You want to make a new gradient, you make another gradient, and the reason why you're seeing it is because I have the mask overlay. But only on Adobe Camera Raw, Lightroom, Photoshop, CC is the brush available to you. And the brush becomes very powerful because you can say, get me the brush, let me hit the erase and take him, make sure the flow, I always have the flow up here. Come on. And I can just erase around him, zoom in. Now the wonderful thing about this is when you get a gradient, when I roll over, remember I see the gradient, I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to go to this gradient that I didn't want, it was part of the demo. But you can see this gradient was coming down. How the hell do you compensate for this? It's easier to take the mask out. And so this in Lightroom 6, and now it's only on CC for both the gradient tool, this gradient, the radial gradient. If you wanted to go ahead and make, I'm going to show this off, and make something darker here, you could use the brush and say, yeah, but don't let her get dark. By the way, if I select the brush, the erase, it's here. If I select the alternate, the A or the B, one I usually have with a larger feather than the other. But if I hit the alternate key, it turns into the brush turns into the eraser turns into the brush. So just with the keyboard, and I can go here and just erase her out. So now, with all of the selective tools, I'll tell you what, this was the reason to upgrade to 6 before it was, and I don't know if it's in the other, but you can see the mask here. And on the gradient tool and the gradient and the radial, the two gradients, it is a powerful, powerful thing because now you can take care of that. Do you guys, I'm pretty sure that's only in the CC version. Is that your understanding, Hank, Eric? And because I know, Bob, you were telling me you don't have that tool because you have Lightroom 6, but not Lightroom 6.
I have Lightroom 6, but I just checked it out, and when I go to the brush, I do see erase and...
No, not the brush. I didn't go to the gradient tool.
Okay, go to the gradient tool, yep.
And up the top, it says new, edit, and brush, right? No, it doesn't say brush. You don't have a brush.
No, it says new.
And edit. And then when you make one, there's the edit is grayed out. Yeah, so I use this an awful lot. And I'll show you.
So it's only available in the Creative Cloud, huh?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I'm sorry to say. But what's not on just the Creative Cloud is when I go to this, where am I? I'm going to Selective. See this? You see that? But what was interesting here, we're going to go over this more and more, but the color, I added a green color here. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to double click the word color, and it goes to nothing. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Oh, look, I put a little dehaze in here too, huh? You double click the name and it zeroes out. You hold the alternate key down, you can reset all of them at once. There's several ways that you can deal with this. The reset, holding the alternate key down, sets everything back. The double clicking here sets that specific one back. And the wonderful thing about these snapshots, and when I'm in a creative mode, I may say, take a snapshot, go to bed, Bob. It's looking good. Go to bed. I come back right where it was and say, oh, God, what did I do? This one was so much better. Now, I'm using this as a tutorial, but it has a great, when I go back to selective, everything, you see the green come back? Because when I went ahead and showed you how I took it out, I'm just going back to my snapshot, which is very interesting. When you make a snapshot, you just click this. And what they've done now is taken the capture time off your computer. So if you do this and you say, yeah, that looks good. And then I'm going to hit a V and go to black and, oops, I'm going to black and white. Oh, I like that. I can hit here and save that. You see, it's always 1/100 of a second. You can get your sequence, although you can right mouse click it and rename it to B&W. And it's just so powerful. I'm going to take this, I'm going to delete these. You can delete them if you want. But I'm going back to my selective, shows all of this. This is green. Watch this power, because sometimes if I wanted to put a brush on her face, and I do this face, I'd like to show my overlay so I see what's happening. I'm going to show you something here, and you guys, because it's going to be a few days before we get, you see where that is? So I'm going to say, shut this off now that I know. And I think what I want to do is, I think I want to increase this saturation and get her skin a little better. Maybe it's too much, I don't know, but watch this. I can go ahead and sometimes I can say, give me a color that is kind of like skin. But watch what I'm going to do now. This is powerful. I'm going to click and hold and go onto my picture and go over her skin tone. And you see how it finds it? If I go over the blue, it's going to find the blue. I'm going to go over here and I find her skin tone. And that's her skin tone. And now I can take her skin down subtly. So if I have somebody whose one arm is brighter than the other one and I want to balance them off, and I'm going to show you this because I guess I don't know why. When we did this the last time, didn't I show the woman here? Look at this. When I go here, she was walking, and one of her legs was, look at how bright this leg was compared to the left leg. And here, I just went ahead and I put on this brush, and I'm guessing, let me just, yeah, see, I picked up the skin from her left leg and put it on the right leg. This is a very powerful tool. This is a very powerful tool, and don't negate that color. If I have a blown out sky or I wanted to put some color in here, I would just paint it with the brush and pick a color or get a neighboring building color. It's kind of fun, huh? Mm-hmm. That's a very powerful, powerful tool. So when we go, and that color is part of every tool that you have. So I added the green over here. Okay, selective. So you see how we did that. I think I could do one more. I want to get to Paul. I want to get to. I'm going to show you one here, and then I'm going to switch over to Hank, and then so next time we meet, we're going to process your images the way you're going to see ours. Let me do one of these. Here's the capture. Obviously, when I imported it, there's a very subtle change, But what you could probably see with the change was a little sharpness and my color red from my profile. Then globally, obviously I did the crop, and then selectively. And the nice thing about selective, I thought this was a little too dull. If I do this, I can show you what this is. And if you say, and I'm going to show it to you, and you say, oh, Bob, you brought that up. I think it looks a little false to me. I'm not sure if the black should be blacker. Well, it doesn't matter. I could bring the blacks darker. I could desaturate it a little if it looks like it's too much. You see? So the selective part of it is using these tools. And I think the best beneficiary we could be of benefit, the best benefit to all of us. Now, this is the capture of this. This capture was 1 1/3 stops overexposed. 1 1/3 stops overexposed. And if I run over the brightest part of this scene, look at this luminosity. 78. 80, the brightest part. I could have gone 2 stops, 2.5 stops. This wouldn't have gone over because it's a flat scene. You know, if using a spot meter, you could place it at 99%. But this is the way it was. This is the way it came in. And the difference you see here is this cyan color. Oops, let me delete this. This cyan color. And I like to use this one here. You know, the different magnifications? Boy, do I love this 2:1. Ooh, no, 2:1. I love the 1:2. Ooh, no, I like the 2:1. This should be going down in thirds and halves. Okay, so when I zoom, you know, it doesn't, you know, horizontal to go along. I zoom in on this, but watch the difference in the color of. And this is the difference between the capture and the import. And there's a subtle color change there, but that's my profile. Globally, I took it all down. Then selectively, I went in, and you can see my masks. They're going to be real obvious here. When I was in selective and I went into the masks, you just hold it. It was this one and this one. And I'm pretty sure on this one, I'm surprised. I must have changed I just changed the exposure. Took the white balance down. So again, this was pretty drastic. This was a capture. That was the capture. This is not overexposed. It's a 1 1/3 stops EV. Look at 92, maybe way up here. Maybe way up here, it could be 96, 98. If I turn on the highlight warnings and I turn on J, you see there's nothing in this picture that is overexposed. Imported it, globally, took it down and cropped it. This is warm. I think I probably changed the color here. Okay, and we have that selectively. I think I probably took off every nook and cranny here. I don't know what this, it looks like it's fading. The stain here, that's that. I probably have very, very unique masks on the doors and the windows. And if you notice, this one, I didn't add red to this one. Did I add red to this one? Maybe I didn't need to add red to that. And this one had its own value to just bring that out. And that was it, and nothing really expressive on this to change pictures. So 3 more minutes, 4 more minutes. I'm going over, Hank, do you have a file ready?
I can pull one up.
Okay, just get one. Now watch what's going to happen, guys. I'm going to hit stop share. At any given point, I have to stop. So you've lost my screen, but Hank is going to now slide to the bottom of the screen and share his screen. So Hank, if you could do that. And if you guys slide to the bottom of the screen also, that share should come up. If you can do it while we're waiting for Hank, then you can see how that does. And when he says share, at any given time as the host can always call that back, but how you doing, Hank? You having issues or?
No, he's up.
He's up? Well,
He's
thank
up,
you very
yeah.
much. Okay, now you're not going to see this, but I'm going to request remote control, and then Hank is going to when you accept the remote control. Okay, so this is the image he chose, and if I go here, now I have, I should be able to click to this image, and I'm clicking to this image over here. So now I'm on Hank's screen. You guys can try this on your own, but during these classes, I'll probably be controlling the other screen, or we'll both mutually do it. So let's quickly go over the 4 phases. I'm not sure about importing here. So look I'm not going to lose any of his information. It's all over here. I'm going to hit reset. When I hit reset, I'm looking at, oh, you've already put it in this one? You've already have some presets here, Hank? Good, because look at Hank.
Hank with presets.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, so this is Hank's reset. So this is the way it came in, and you may find this interesting. Eric, you may find this interesting on for teaching also here. Under the Lightroom General presets and the shopping face and the shopping and scenics, look at this one. Zeroed like woof, takes everything away, and you're going to get, this is Adobe's Lightroom idea of zeroing. It just takes everything away. That's kind of as flat as it was coming in. When we hit reset, and I'm going to go down here so you can see the power of this. When I hit reset, did you see that sharpening occur? Was that obvious to everybody over the internet?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So this is what he wants to do anyways. He just wants to get it to this starting point. That's phase 1. Phase 2 would be, remember, you could do color balance now, you could do color balance later, you could see where it goes. The first thing you want to do is hit auto tone. Optimizes from the top down. Now, look at this little S-curve here. Exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows. It does this little dance, and that dance is different for every image. But this is optimizing Adobe's adaptive technology. Now at this point, you start going for global. So again, if I hit reset, the first thing I'm going to do is hit auto tone. Then, again, this is global kind of stuff. Slider, sometimes I use this, and you'll see why. This is the exposure. You can see when I run over it, it says exposure over here. This is the shadows. These are the highlights. These are the whites. So sometimes I'll do this. And once you hit auto exposure, I can tell you 20% of the time it may be the right exposure when you're done. It's just the nature of force. So the first one you'll probably always want to hit is exposure. Now, this comes to be the creative process, whatever you think you see. First of all, I'm going to probably use the power of the lens correction and just check and see what it'll do on auto. I see nothing. Oh, okay. You see that difference? That is Adobe trying to figure out where these lines occur. And I like that. And you know we can change anything. But I'm going to leave that there for now. The next thing I see is, well, you see, I see a lot of lines. So I know if I increase the clarity, and if I double click the clarity, goes back to the default. You see where that went to? Didn't go to 0, it went to the default. So when I go here and I bring this up, I want to try to bring, you know, get a feel of what's happening here. And it's also happening here. And so I'll try to go through my global adjustments at best. And then I'm looking at this and says, gee, maybe this needs a little more punch. I'll try that. I could go back here and try to pull more out of the sky. And so what we're trying to do here is see what we can do. I'm looking at this building, and I don't know if it's soft from depth of field, if it's soft from whatever it is. I think it's an important element to be sharp, but I don't think I want to sharpen the whole thing. You know, and you could sharpen, and I'll talk about a preset. I'll probably, but I'm probably at 66 for most every. I don't know if you can see it, maybe too subtle, but yeah, I see it a little bit. Okay, so now I'm looking globally. One could dispute whether, I don't know if the vignette is global. But I tend to think, you know, it's here, I want to see what it looks like, and I'm going to hold the alternate key down and reset it. This is another good preset that it has under effects, and I'll talk more about this as the vignette 1. So I'll put a vignette 1, and if it's too much, I'll just take back here. And now let's stop there and say that's the end of my global. Now I want to go to selective and say, geez, do I have a gradient here? Can I do, and I'm going to do this really quickly. If I do this gradient, and reset this, and let's just say I want to take the sky down a little and maybe make it a little more blue, but there's really no blue to pick from. I'll try to pick my own blue. Well, it's closer back here. If I go here to this blue, now you see that's a 99%, a 90% saturation. I can take this down. Let's just say we like this, because I'm not gonna, it's more important that you see the process. And take the highlights down. I always show this one. You see the blue here in the tree?
Mm-hmm.
This is, this is not a tease for the brush. I can only tell you that I was in the gradient. I can only tell you that it's such an important tool for me now, that when I make this gradient, which we always make, you see the plus sign holding down the alternate, and I can just go here and, you know, it's easy to erase this, and we'll process more and more. I want to show you something that if I go here and I go a little into the sky, you're never going to see the minus blue up there, but I mean in the sky, but you'll see it come off of here. And you see the blue stain over there? One to two is sometimes I like this, and you know I can go over here and see, or you can set the default so when you zoom in and you click on it, it goes right to the center of the screen. This is where you're going to turn this on. See how I'm turning this on, the overlay on, the letter O, keyboard stroke O, turns it on and off. So I joggle back and forth to this, and I'm going to go up here. And what I'll do is I'll go, I'm using the scroll of the mouse. Oh, I don't know why I have such a big, feather on this. Oh no, it's not mine. Right. I'm sorry, Hank. You can put it back to 100. What I usually do, guys, is I'll get this one to a feather. I'll get like the A to a feather of 33%. And no, I get the A to about 66%. And I get the B to about 33%. And that's how I go back and forth, just because sometimes I want a smaller one. And this one is, you may change all the time, but I'm usually starting a feather around 33. So when I go up here, and I'm going to make this quick, I'm just going to go here. Now what I want to do is take this overlay off, so I'm going to press 0, and you can see the blue start to come away and looking more natural, right? Doesn't mean we're not going to. Okay, so when we do this, I'm going to hit the letter O again, which turns on and off this. You see why I like to leave it on? Your scroll key will make it this larger. And I'm only about 2 minutes away, guys, so hang in there with the energy, because we're going to do these on everybody's slides, and then you'll see. And I'm going to go here. And we'll talk about the masks and stuff like that and how to make a mask. And you'll be surprised how when you go over, you may see that, Command Z, but if you go close, you may never see the difference of that slight little mask up here, having a little bit of cold blue underneath here. So what I'm going to do is, and I'll go right small here, and there's ways you can work the mask with this, but I'm going to just stop here, because watch what I'm going to do. And I go here, and I go back to my history. Can you see the difference between the blue in there to...
Sure.
Yeah, and if I go here and I say, hey, I know what's happening, I'm going to say done here, go down. Now, this is all under selective, hue, saturation and color. And I may say, get the saturation and try to pull up the color of the building, because this is just happening in the reds and the oranges. Now, I'm going to hold the alternate key down and reset it. For those of you who know the tat tool or forgot about it, this is the tat tool. If you, why did I lose the thing? It's adjustment tone or whatever. But watch this. If I do this, it's going to pick up that color. I'm going to go here, and it's going to pick up this color. You see, it knows that it's made up with no red, orange in it. And if I wanted to pick up the green, it would pick up the green. Now, this may be certainly too much. I'm over-exaggerating it, so I can take it and slide it down and probably take it all the way down and take the green out of it. So I just go here, and if I overdo it, it's okay. I can go back. I'm getting an idea, and I'm going to go here. I'm going to do one more thing, because I mentioned this. I'm going to get the brush, and I'm going to turn this on. Remember, I can do it with my brush or the letter O, and I'm going to, and I want to make sure this is always at 100%, because I pull it back afterwards. So look at it. I'm going to do this, because all I want to apply here is some sharpening. And I'm going to hit the letter O, and you see me bleed over. That was kind of a sloppy mask, but I do it quickly, because if it's worthwhile and I see it, I'll go back and clean it up. Like I may want to put it down here and one over here. Now I could scroll it down and try to make it as close as I can, and no one's going to see that. And let me get this little, and you see how I can always look at it when it's on here. So if I do that, well, let me go and go to here. If I go with the sharpness, and guys, this is important here, because if I go with the sharpness and maybe a little bit of clarity to increase the contrast, look at the difference. You know, it does a punch. If you say, wow, that's great, Bob, I would have never thought of that. Or, Bob, I would have never done that. Well, then don't do it. Sometimes I do it and say, that was a stupid idea. But of course, one never stops. When I look at this, I went, oh my God, this does not belong here. And you see where it picked it up? It looked like it picked it up to the right. See, I can't see what it did because it's never You change it on one brush, it's only on that brush. You need to change. Do you see where it picked it up? You see the extra,
Yeah.
well, then let's pick it up from over here. Maybe nobody will see it if it's over here. So you find out where you want to take it. And the feather, it's pretty hard here. But watch the feather of 0. See how it meshes it in? Nobody's going to watch that. And if you want to get, and you could clone it or heal it. And I always try it because you're surprised. Healing just is really like transferring the texture. Cloning is actually cloning. And you could see, let me zoom in really, really close here, 1-to-1. And you probably can see, now you see how that looks false? And watch what happens when I get to the feather. And sometimes I can change the size, but if I change the feather, I mean, you'll never see it. This makes me want to do stupid things like make another one and start getting rid of this. And when I do it, it tries to pick. I don't know why Adobe went south, but it certainly went south. But you can go and take it, pick it up, and put it where you want it. I mean, it's really easy to change. It's really easy to change, you know, things. But I'm going to take that one now and delete it. So when I go, this is it. I go back here. I'm not done with this yet. Didn't I put a lot more yellow in here? Let me see. That's, hang on, that's going to be the before. And this is the after. And yeah, because look at, boy, you remember we putting the yellow and the green and we thought that was a lot? I'm surprised how natural that looks. So the only thing we may want to do is replace, you know, and go further, but it's a great place to stop. And next week, I'll try to set up 1 or 2 and then go to your computers. And the more we see it and the more questions you have, because when I look at this, did I bring up the green and the yellow over here and it was a sloppy mask? Remember how sloppy this mask was? But I really don't see a lot of the sloppiness. But if you wanted to look close and see, but you know what, the reason why I'm bringing this up is, well, look at the sharpness here. The reason why I'm bringing this up is saying, oh my God, I think I want to select this and continue it up here. Maybe not Control Z. I thought I would get more of a punch over there. You see, maybe it does work. And you can go over here. So sometimes I'll extend that mask or I'll change it if it looks crazy and I can see something of a difference. Command Z. But anyways, I think this is pretty interesting. This is that brush. And you see how big it was. And I'm going to, well, you can see the effect it has in the sharpness. God, I'm going to hit Command Z. And I think I may just stroke it down the rest of the wall here. Whatever you want to do. And now you have that mask. And if nothing else, it's like a, that gives it a nice little depth. And it's like a little note. It's written in there and you can go back and do it. I think, guys, thanks for the effort. I'm sorry for the slow start. Any questions or anything? I'm probably burnt out. It looks to me like the comments are working. I'll hang for a few minutes if somebody is saying, don't leave me. I just want to know why this isn't on my computer. But I think this is the before, this is the after. And I'm not too sure what else we'll want to do here, but I may not take it to a completion. I may just get what's a good example. Okay. Any thoughts or just kind of my mind is getting a little cloudy now, so maybe I'm sure you guys are too.
I think I'm saturated. I think I've learned a lot.
Yeah, to just watch it happen. In what? Just watching the strokes, Freddie, or just seeing? Because I think
Some of it's refreshing and so refreshing what I used to know, and some of it is brand new stuff I didn't know.
Well, if we have 6 participants here,
Yeah.
and I'm going to show 2, and then go to the participants. If the last week there's more, time, we'll just keep doing it, because I know when I get into the expressive and going into the round trip to changing pixels or little bit of how I would process and keep everything going, I may push that off to the 4th week, because I think processing, because if we can expand our palette of tools and our way of thinking, it's like, wow, Bob keeps doing that. It's not me. But who the hell saw this? I mean, I didn't see this until you start working on a picture. And at that point, I don't know. But when I do things like this, and sometimes I say, God, there's 2 people. There's 2 people in this window. I think I'm going to say, no, there's obviously not people in the window. But I think phase 1, 2, and 3 starts honing you in on this picture, to then you start getting real expressive. And when Sai says, I feel my relatives going to Dachau here, like, I don't see it. What are you seeing? He's emotionally involved with it, but he's got to say, well, what am I feeling? What do I want other people to feel? And I think when you work with it in an orderly fashion, like import, global, and selective, these things just coming out like surprises. So I thank you for your energy and time. I'll hang a bit.
Your energy and time.
Oh yeah, well, I'm on a high here and just sitting and I'm making visuals and making notes here. I think this is very valid. By the end of this, I think I'm going to commit to doing this book, because my first book is, I think, so damn important. I think it changes the way people think. I think 80% of people who read that book are going to spit up, because it's going to just be too crazy. It's just too far. But something like this, to see somebody's approach to, again, the word is adapt, not adopt, because if it's adapted, if it's adopted, that's no good, But if you see a whole bunch of tools, you adapt them to the way you think, and that's the serious photographer, the person who's aware of that. And I'll tell you what, some of these tools, Hank, I'm gonna try to share my screen. So could you stop sharing your screen?
Okay.
Okay, I got it here. I cannot share while the other. Okay, tell me when you're stop sharing. Okay, I got it, and I'm going to share my screen. And we were just talking about adapting, not adopting, and oh, that was good. We changed to my screen, and I totally forgot what I was doing, so that must not have been important. But use our our site. I'm going to work on that download, and it was something back in the first place that I used. I can't remember where I was going for here, but I think a lot of sharing, and that's where we're going to get better. So we'll do a lot of that. Guys, I'm going to be in touch with you by emails, but if you have questions, put it on the comments. I'll make sure it's all working. And again, I thank you again.
Okay.
I'm done. Everybody can peel off one at a time. You can leave the screen or I'll quit it. I'll wait to see if anybody wants to hang, but that's it.